You're listening to Navid Moosa of the Mindset Movement. Good day, good people. My name is Navid Moosa. I'm your host today and always for the Mindset Movement. Today, I'm welcomed by my guest here, Brittany Melville of Next Generation. Thank you, Brittany, for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So each and every week, we try to provide value for small business owners and big business owners as well. Believe it or not, you may be a big business, just don't know it. And we don't really have a little fluff. We go right into it. And just want to say thank you for the new listeners. We know there's a lot of content on there, a lot of content out there, but you choose to stop here. So we appreciate that. And for those who are loyal and keep coming back, we appreciate that as well. So thank you very much. So, in continuing with the business in the box format that we've been working on with those who have a 9 to 5 and a 5 to 9, your weekend warriors, your hustlers, everyone, we just want to keep providing value. So, um, the reason why Brittany is here, and I'll let her expand on it, but basically, Brittany works for Next Generation. They do a whole bunch of items associated with retirement accounts and investments. So, as always, disclaimer, this is not financial advice or tax planning advice or anything like that. This is just for educational and informational purposes only. So, without further ado, I'm going to let Brittany kind of take over the mic over here and talk about how businesses, whether they know it or not, can really establish retirement accounts for themselves and potentially for their employees. I don't know. Let's talk about that.
Sounds good. Thanks, Navid. So yes, we want to talk about retirement planning and retirement accounts for business owners. It seems to be one of those topics that has not received enough attention. In speaking with a lot of investors for which we hold IRAs, for example, we'll often speak with people who think, okay, my options are a Roth IRA or just a regular IRA. And I'm a business owner and I don't have a lot of money saved for retirement. What are my options and what can I do? So it's important to understand that if you are a business owner, there are retirement accounts specifically designed for you, and that's where I think there is an opportunity to provide more education. So I think most of us, when we think about retirement accounts, we think about, okay, a 401k, or other type of plan like that, that someone might have if they're employed in corporate America, for example, not self-employed, but a 401k they might have with an old employer or a company that they're working for. Um, those are very common. And then people also tend to think about a regular IRA or a Roth IRA. But there are other types of IRAs and other types of accounts for business owners. So one of those is the SEP IRA. And oftentimes, this comes up in speaking with business owners that um, may not have a lot of money saved for retirement, but they want to get started somehow. And they're making good money in business.
So,
Um,
excuse me,
and they,
real quick. So, you said SEP as an SEP IRA?
yes,
Okay. And does the SEP stand for anything in particular?
it stands for Simplified Employee Pension.
Okay. So, Simplify Employee Pension IRA, which is individual retirement account.
Correct.
Okay, cool. Sorry. Thanks.
No worries. Um, so what that enables an individual to do is to take a portion of their earnings from their business and stash it into the retirement account. So basically, the IRS sets a limit every year on how much you can put in, and they set it for SEP IRAs as up to 25% of your annual compensation, and it maxes out at $58,000 per year. So it's going to be the lesser of the two, whether 25% of your compensation or 58,000, whatever's lesser, is the total amount that you can put in. So out of pocket, if you have cash that you've earned in your business, and you want to put it into a retirement account, a SEP IRA is the type of account that could be a fit. Um, it's also important to understand how accounts like this work from a tax perspective. So a SEP IRA is essentially a tax deferred IRA, meaning that if you're putting money in it's pre-tax typically. So what that also means for you, if you're a business owner, is that you can typically, again, this is general sense, and it's always best to speak with a tax advisor to know for sure what applies to your situation. But you can typically deduct those contributions that you're making to a SEP IRA when you file your taxes, which could potentially lower your taxable income and your tax rate. So there's more than one benefit, obviously, to doing that. Then, of course, when you have those funds in your SEP IRA, you're able to, exercise the many options you have to invest it and grow that, right? So get you can get started with something in your first year by making a contribution. You can continue to make contributions every year and continue to invest those dollars. And obviously, that's one of the goals in retirement planning is we want to try to accelerate our wealth in tax advantaged accounts. So you're not having to pay tax on what you're making on those investments until later on you decide to withdraw those funds for retirement purposes. Um, After the age of 59 and a half, with a tax deferred IRA, you can take money out without a 10% penalty. If it is a tax deferred IRA at that point, you would be responsible for paying income tax on the amount that you're withdrawing. So that's essentially how a SEP IRA would work. Um, if you have employees, you also have the option to offer it to employees. And there are certain rules about contributing to employees' accounts underneath the SEP plan, but the SEP plan itself is designed for the business owner. So that is one of the probably the most common plans. Um, Another one that's common is a what we call a solo 401k plan. And that is basically like a 401k. If you think about one that you might have with a current employer or a company that you used to work for, it's called a qualified plan, and that just means that it's a retirement plan that was created um, specifically with certain provisions, and that it is tax protected in some way. So if you're a business owner, you can actually set up a 401k like that for your own business, and they call it solo because in that sense you are the sole owner of the business. The plan is set up under the name of your business for you, and then you can actually also include a spouse. If you have children, you can also include them in the 401k plan. And then you can also include some business partners usually.
So when you
Um,
say include them, like, so it's like a checking, not that it's a checking account, but it's an account where they're like an authorized person on that retirement account, essentially, even if it's, so if I'm a business owner, but my wife is not a member of my LLC. I'm sole proprietor. She is still able to be on that solo 401k program or retirement account.
yes, that's correct.
Okay, and does it matter what kind of business you own? Does it matter if it's like, obviously I'm in real estate, but like I said, our listeners are everything from real estate to truck drivers to electricians, plumbers, lawyers, whoever. Does it matter what type of business you're in?
Typically, it's for W-2, um, like employees.
Okay,
Um, the SEP for a SEP, you can be a W-2 or 1099.
okay.
So that is often something that we talk to real estate agents about because they may not realize that that's an option for them, even if they're employed, with a company. They could potentially open a SEP for themselves if they're paid on a 1099 or any type of sort of contracting basis.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah. And then we talked about contribution limits for the SEP. Uh, Contributions for the 401k in that sort of solo setup are interesting because it allows you to, it's a fixed amount that maxes out. Basically, the maximum that you can contribute is 19,500 per year. And then what you can do is you can contribute that amount as an employee of the plan, but then you can also match it from with the business income. So it's sort of how if you think about the way that you might contribute to a workplace retirement plan,
Hmm.
and the employee would match it.
Yep.
It works that way as well. So it gives you, in comparison to a SEP, it gives you a little bit more potential to contribute more on less income because the SEP contribution amount is calculated as a percentage. And then the 401k contribution amount is calculated as just that flat amount you can contribute up to, and then you can match that amount. So you can effectively double it.
Oh, that's actually nice. So now I know, as a business owner and talking to other business owners is always, well, what's it cost? What's it cost? Right? Because I was trying to cut costs and stuff like that, make sure it's manageable. But personally, I'm a big believer in investing in your employees, invest in the people, put people over profits, if you will. So, and I don't know if you can speak to this, or give a range. What are the costs on average that you're seeing or have you seen to set up a SEP IRA versus a solo 401k, for example?
The IRA costs, now it's obviously going to vary with every company depending on who you set it up with. Um, so I could mainly speak for the IRA services that we provide, because our fees are driven by the types of investments that are allowed. So it
Hmm.
might be a little bit different depending on what you're investing in. But generally speaking, the biggest difference between the SEP and the solo 401k is that the solo 401k is typically going to require you to have a plan administrator.
Okay.
Um, and what that means is because every qualified plan, like a solo 401k, for example, every plan is set up a little bit differently. Plan documents have to be drafted in order to create the plan. And those documents are sort of like the blueprint for how that plan is allowed to work, what that plan can do, what it can't do, the rules that govern that plan. And they're a little bit unique and different for each plan. So when someone sets up a plan, they work with a TPA, which is a third party administrator, plan advisor, to create the documents for them. And then in order to maintain that plan, every year those documents have to be reviewed and updated. So if certain laws are changing, or there's certain industry, requirements that were not present the prior year that now have to be addressed in the plan, then those plan documents may need to be updated on a regular basis. So there is likely a fee that would be associated with paying the plan administrator to update the documents. And then in addition to that, there's specific type of tax reporting for solo 401ks, because they are more unique. So there may be additional fee associated with that type of reporting. Whereas IRAs are a little bit more straightforward. The document that governs the IRA is the same from IRA to IRA to IRA. So there's not as much flexibility on the one side, with IRAs, whereas with the 401k, there's more flexibility to add things into the plan or maybe allow it to do more things. Um, Again, you can include certain people, whereas with an IRA, it's just your plan. It's tied to an individual with an IRA. So you can see that there's not necessarily one that's better or worse. It's just a matter of understanding the differences, the trade-offs, the pros and cons, and then making a personal decision as to what's best for you. But I think understanding the options, depending on what it is that you're trying to accomplish, and again, this goes back to me, um, or for me, this goes back to just understanding that these options are for business owners and that you're not just limited to the typical IRAs that people think about, the traditional and the Roth, which only allow you really to put in about 6,000 per year typically. So that's much more limiting for a business owner who might be making great money and wants to put more money in, which is why these other plans are designed.
So could business owners have multiple plans then, I guess, across the spectrum? They could have a 401k, a SEP, a Roth, and uh, yeah, and yeah, they could have all those, I guess.
Yeah, technically they could have multiple plans. It probably is wise to have a conversation with their CPA or
Yeah.
tax advisor about, whether it's beneficial to have those plans or that many, and then if they're contributing to one of the plans, does that um, still allow you to contribute to the other ones. So sometimes there are certain rules that say if you're maxing out your contributions in this plan, then you may be limited as to what you can contribute in this plan.
Gotcha. Okay. That was
Those
because I'm
rules
like it.
may vary.
Yeah, it could get kind of hairy at some point because you have so much coming in. It's like, where's your income? It's all can't be all in retirement. You have to have something coming in to live off of. And so I guess that kind of brings me to another question: is uh, hmm, I had a brain fart there. I can't remember what my question was actually. It was about um it was about the solo 401k comparisons, but I guess, oh, that's what it was. So, on social media, a lot you're seeing stuff about, generational wealth. You're seeing a lot of stuff about, how you can pay your kids in your LLC and all this kind of stuff. Is there an age limitation? Like, hey, the minimum age someone has to be to have an IRA is this. Is there any kind of ages you can speak about as far as what the limits the law requires or allows?
Mhm. So I can just speak generally. There may be certain exceptions, so I don't want anyone to quote me on this. But generally speaking, once someone has turned the age of 18, they can open their own retirement account.
Okay.
Um, One of the interesting exceptions is with a Roth IRA. Roth IRA can be opened for a minor by the parent if the child has some sort of income. So this is common in the case where someone might have their children in acting or modeling, and they're making money, they're generating income, but they're not adult. So in that case, the Roth can be opened and started for the child. And then, of course, once they turn age 18, transfer over to them. But all the others typically would require you to be 18 or older. And then there are also eligibility requirements to be aware of when it comes to looking at some of um, the accounts for business owners. Um, Particularly the SEP IRA. I believe there are, and again, I'm not an accountant, but I believe there are requirements on how long you have to have worked for the business. And you must be earning a certain amount per year in compensation from that business in order to have the SEP. So there are, again, specific requirements to be aware of to educate yourself on. The best source aside from an accountant or tax advisor is really the IRS website. IRS.gov is really going to give you the most updated information, and that could change on an annual basis. So, for example, the contribution limits that I mentioned for some of these plans, they could change next year. They typically will increase a little bit from year to year, and sometimes they stay the same. So checking the IRS website is the best way to keep tabs on that. But understanding the way that the plans are structured and kind of who they're designed for and the benefits that you can get out of them, I think is the most important thing, especially if you're a business owner. Understanding how you can maximize your savings.
Yeah, no, and I'm glad you say that because so we have a guest on that came for my personal CPA. He spoke um, about there's just so many rules are changing all the time. So going to irs.gov is probably the best resource because they're the ones making the rules, changing the rules and stuff like that. And you do want to take advantage of that, especially if I think as business owners, and the royal we, I should say, is we just look at about growing our business. We don't look after the fact, right? It's kind of like, hey, let's grow it. Let me get my first employee. Let me get my first building, all that, which is great. You're excited, right? You're drinking your own Kool-Aid. You're making your own Kool-Aid and you're drinking it, and that's awesome. You should be. But there's life after this business, but we don't look that far ahead, right? Because we're just in this hustle build mode. But something I try to encourage listeners here is having that strong foundation. And to me, I mean, ever since we got together, and I think I don't know how many years it's been. For those who are new listeners, I do real estate. I do a lot of real estate investment, and Next Generation offers a self-directed IRA feature for a way to invest in real estate. And we'll do a different show on that one there. But the reason why I'm bringing that up is that when I first started, like I saw this, but I didn't plan for my future. I didn't plan for it. So once I met with Brittany and I met with other people in a similar circles, it was like, hey, you're paying this income over here. You could be doing this kind of stuff. And this is where like a good CPA comes in, a good bookkeeper comes in, a good real estate attorney comes in. You got to have that strong foundation to begin with. And don't look at it as if it's money. Oh, I got to spend all this money to set this stuff up. It's still an investment. You know, you buy a hammer, you buy a computer, you buy things to help you do your job to the best. Well, all that stuff needs to be protected. Your business needs to be protected. Your money needs to be protected. Getting an IRA helps you protect it. Getting an IRA set up can really help you set up that foundation from the door. And listen, I mean, I'm in my mid 40s here, so I didn't learn about this stuff till way later on in life. However, my son, he's a teenager. So yeah, he's gonna work here at the office and do some stuff and I'll compensate him for it. But that's what I was kind of asking. That's kind of cool that I could potentially set him up with like an IRA for his self, for his pay or something like that. Obviously, I'll talk to my tax advisor and CPA and get more information, but it's nice to know that the option is there. Um, and it's nice. I mean, a lot of people listen to this, they're probably going to say the same thing. Oh, I wish I knew this, or my parents never told me about these things and stuff like that. And it's true. However, there's no more excuse to say, well, I didn't know. Right? That's why I like doing these podcasts with people like you, is you're in the know and you're putting them in the know. And then they can, at the end of this episode, we'll put, if you're watching this, we'll have Brittany's contact information up there. If you're listening to this, she'll say what her contact information is for her company. But I hope you guys are listening to this, that how you can really set yourself up, set your family up, and set your employees up for life beyond this business that you're building. That's the beauty of it. So I just wanted to say that in between there before we, kept going on some other stuff. But I just think it's very, very important for people to understand that, listen, the laws are changing, the rules are changing consistently. So, education is key, and being in contact with companies like yourself, the IRS website, is going to be key with it. Now, having said that, you talked about getting a planned administrator or a TPA, third party authorization. Are those people that I can just Google and put that in and get somebody, or is that somebody like you guys have a network of people you can recommend, or how does one find a plan administrator or a TPA? How does that go about?
Again, it just applies for certain types of plans. So the qualified plan or the solo 401k, typically. Um, Depending on where someone is setting up their plan, if they set it up with, some of the big name companies like a Fidelity, for example, sometimes they offer, from what we've been told by our clients that are trying to do other things once they've already set them up, sometimes they offer sort of like an out of the box plan where they kind of just like set everything up for you and then they also include that service. What we found is when that's the case, um, it tend to be more convenient for people to set it up that way because it's all kind of under one name and it's sort of like a one-stop shop. But then it also tends to be less flexible as far as letting them add things or do additional things later after the fact. So we do know of a couple firms that offer TPA services that offer the flexibility to allow investors to invest in multiple types of things because sometimes the plan will also limit what you can invest in. So that's something to consider ahead of time, is thinking about the types of things you might want to invest in through your plan. Will this TPA allow you to do those things? Um, so there are a few firms we're aware of that we have listed on our website. Not that we have an affiliation per se, but we just know that our clients have utilized them to set up these types of accounts. And of course, I'm sure a Google search works as well. And depending on whether you're looking for someone local, for example, there are firms like that all over the place. So it's
Okay.
just a matter of, yeah, of asking the questions when you're evaluating one,
Okay.
how
Cool.
they typically work.
All right. So let's keep the conversation. Is what other kind of retirement plans can small business owners, if there is any others, can they take advantage of?
So really, the SEP and the solo 401k are, I would say, those are the most commonplace.
Okay.
There is also a simple IRA, and I can't really get into that much because there's too much complexity and they're really not very common. Um, And it's kind of ironic that there's complexity.
In the word simple, yeah, exactly.
Um, but they're out there. It's probably a conversation to have with an accountant as to whether it makes sense. It's There's a different type of matching component to being able to contribute and then match a percentage, and then how often that has to be done and how it has to be done. But those three, SEP, Simple, and Solo 401k, are really the three main options. And then, of course, as you had said, Navid, if someone wanted to have a Roth IRA, if you're a business owner and you want to have a Roth, of course you can. Um, Being a business owner isn't really going to limit you to your IRA options as much as it's going to open up additional options for you by being a business owner. So, um, traditional tax deferred IRA, Roth IRA, SEP, Simple, Solo 401k. Those are the really big, really common ones out
Common
there, the
ones.
big ones. Yeah.
So I'll have one last question, and I'll definitely let you go. So what if, actually, two questions. For someone listening to this right now, who is saying, is it too late? Because I've been around, already set everything up. Is it too late? Is it too late for me to get started in any one of these programs, any one of these IRAs you recommended or you had indicated about?
I always say never too late with this because um, there's really no like minimum amount that you have to get into an IRA to start investing and make an impact, depending on what type of account you open. But you said it earlier too, Navid. Like this is an investment in not it's an investment in something bigger than yourself because it's not only about saving ideally for your own retirement, but leaving a legacy for others. And even if it's there's no amount that wouldn't have an impact on somebody else to be able to save and to leave behind for somebody as well. And then when you think about the power of compounding, and you think about the power of investing in something that could double or triple your return in a short period of time, if you're investing wisely, you could really in a short amount of time accelerate that wealth. So I personally don't think there's a time at which you should just like wave the white flag and say, I'm not doing this because it's too late. It's never too late to get something started, right? Something is better than nothing when it comes to
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And so that was one question. The second question I try to ask all the guests is, if you had to give one piece of advice to anybody who's a business owner right now listening to this, what would you hope or want them to at least walk away with after at least listening to this podcast or watching the YouTube channel?
yeah. For business owners, when it comes to this topic, invest in your education. Just education to me is such a powerful tool, and just having the knowledge of your options, um, it can make all the difference, right? Like us having this conversation today could be the difference between somebody, not saving anything for retirement or somebody taking action tomorrow to, make a decision to do something and then, impact their future and take control of their future. So when it comes to this, just looking for ways to educate yourself as much as possible. There's so many resources out there that don't require much investment. And I know this is a good resource on this podcast. So that's what I would say.
Cool. Thank you very much. Well, actually, Brittany, do you want to leave your information? Do you want to, how can they contact you or the company or anything like that? If you mind on saying some words on that.
Sure. So again, my name's Brittany Melville. I'm I oversee the team that is in charge of setting up accounts for new investors. So a lot of what we focus on is providing this education. And I know we have limited time here today, but there's so much more information available. You could visit the website at nextgenerationtrust.com. There you'll find more IRA information. The contribution limits we talked about are available on the website. We do specialize in specific types of investments in IRAs, so you'll notice that if you go there. It doesn't mean you're limited to that, but definitely peruse, the website. And then we're also on all social media, Next Generation Trust Company, if you look that up. We're a women-owned business based in New Jersey, so if you're local, I'd say stop by, but we have an office open. Hopefully, we'll be able to say that again soon.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, you'll have all of our contact information on the website, so that's the best place to start. Give us
Perfect.
a call or check out some of the other sources.
All right, great. Thank you very much, Brittany, for your time. And as always, we respect everyone's time here, so we try to keep these brief yet informative at the same time. But again, like she said, you can visit www.nextgenerationstrust.com. Get more information off of there. There's tons of resources there they have. I personally go there a lot, at least once a week myself, just to learn, educate myself and my team. And again, thank you for joining us, Brittany. I really appreciate it. I know you're a busy person. I know things are crazy over there in a good way. Each and every week, we close the show saying the same thing: take care of the client, and everything else will fall into place. I promise you, don't chase the money. Just take care of your clients. If you take care of them, everything else just falls in. It's a beautiful thing, and you'll see your business grow 10 times, no doubt about it. Take care. Again, thank you, Brittany. Appreciate you being available for the show. And I'm sure I'll talk to you soon for another investment deal got going on with another investor and so on and so forth.
Sounds good. Thanks
All
so
right.
much for having me.
Take care. Have a good one.